I'm David Wessel with the Wall Street Journal. I'm joined today by Peter McPherson, who in his current job is president of the Association of Public Universities. Thank you for being with us today. Peter, as you know, the president this week is going to once again pound the podium and say that college costs are going up too fast, and the old federal strategy of trying to increase financial aid fast enough to keep up with rising tuition can't go on forever. So he wants you to find a way, or your members to find a way, to slow the growth of tuition. Is he right?
Well, we definitely need to contain the costs for the students. You need to think about the tuition, or the cost of education, is composed of two parts. One, state appropriation, and two, tuition. That's the whole. So as the states have dramatically cut their state appropriations, we've had to raise tuition to the students. And those are the facts. But that doesn't take away from the need for us to continue to work really hard at reducing the costs. We've got about 25% more students in this country in public universities. My group is the large public universities.
25%
more students than we did 10 years ago. So you get a lot more students, cut in state appropriations, money has to come from somewhere, and by and large, that has been the cause of tuition increases. Not everything, but a big part.
When the president puts the spotlight on an industry like yours and says basically, you need to be more efficient, we're not going to keep letting you do things the way you do, how do the universities, their trustees and presidents react?
Well, it's not a new spotlight, of course, the last several years. And I've probably talked to 100 presidents over the last few months, my usual call to see how things are going and that kind of thing. And virtually everybody is saying, I want higher graduation rates, and here's what we're trying to do to get there. I try to contain costs. We're public universities. We're for institutions for the public good. So we feel pretty intensely that we've got to do that. I was president of Michigan State for 10 years, and I know every tuition decision is agony for every public universities. We need a larger portion of our population to have college degrees, and public universities have to be a big part of that solution.
Now, the president is also talking quite a bit about finding better ways to measure the quality, the value of education, so that parents and students, and maybe even sometimes someday the federal student aid agencies, can decide whether it's a good deal. Now, measuring the outcomes of education is a little tricky. Do you think it can be done in a way that the public can use and the government can use? Well,
I think there's some things you can. You can reasonably look at whether a student gets a degree. Now, the president has a scoreboard up now that really is incomplete, and our hope is that that can be changed. Currently, it shows the percentage of students that come to an institution full-time, first time as a freshman, and whether they graduated in a certain number of years. The university community has put together a website that will be fully operational in October that will show not only those first-time, full-time freshmen, but also students that transferred in, that they get a degree, and students that transferred out to another institution, they get a degree. That's the more complete picture we need. I think graduation rates is a reasonable way to look at an institution. Now, you have to take in consideration the preparation level of the student. If you've got all the students coming in, you would expect higher graduation rates, but that's a reasonable measurement. Something we don't have now, which I think in due course we will, is it's reasonable to know whether your graduates got a job. Now, you might look at job right away, or in 5, 10 years. Now, that's data that universities individually don't have.
Right, but sometimes you hear from educators that they don't want the government to be measuring how much people make when they graduate, that makes it all seem like it's some kind of commercial bargain.
I would distinguish between employment, which almost everybody wants a job, and income. Income gets a little trickier because there's some types of jobs, some areas of work that by the nature are pretty low paying. And also what your income is immediately out of college versus 5 and 10 years out. But certainly
whether you have a job is a legitimate.
Yeah, whether you got a job is a very legitimate question a few months after college. It is reasonable for people, this is information students need to have, as well as parents and society, and decisions reasonably can be based upon it. There's more to, of course, college than a job. And we always have to keep that in mind. You want to learn how to learn. You want to have a richer, fuller view of things. And but employment is one of those things.
Now, one of the things we've learned in the newspaper industry, and once upon a time you were director of Dow Jones before it was purchased by Rupert Murdoch, and you know this, is that technology has a way of making you do things in ways that you never imagined were possible. And I think part of what the president says, and you hear this from other people, is that the universities have to find a way to better use information technology, online learning, to provide same service or better for less cost. Is that realistic, or is that just...
I think it's realistic, and I see a lot of people working at it. I mean, down the street here is Virginia Tech, that doesn't teach any more freshman math, including calculus, except by a way of self-paced computer program. They can go see a professor periodically, but nobody does. They're getting substantially higher learning outcomes, and the costs are less. I'm seeing in many places you're going to have hybrid courses where you have the information technology as a component as well as a traditional method. I think particularly in those first couple of years, the gateway courses, calculus, statistics, that are the gateways to majors, you're going to see more and more of this. I think also that we're going to see, and already in place are some tracking systems advising and tracking how students are doing. You take a calculus course that you're doing in part online, you can feed into the tracking system when a student begins to get in trouble, and thereby have professor intervention, personal intervention, or student service resources focused. We're going to see the campus. We're going to continue to have residential campuses, and a lot of distance education. But technology is going to be a key, not just for cost savings, and they're very important, but we've got to have more learning outcomes. And universities are thinking about these two things in tandem: how to contain cost and how to drive quality, how to drive outcomes.
Now, I think from the outside point of view, from someone who's not in a university, although I have paid college tuition,
yes.
There seems to be a bit of resistance sometimes to change. You have traditional departments, you have professors who are used to doing things they want the way they do them. Some of the institutions of higher education are really modeled on 17th, 8th century Britain and stuff like that. Are you confident that American higher education is resilient enough to make changes without having a lot of disruption?
Oh, I have fewer questions about the day than I had even a couple years ago.
Really?
Because I see so many things happening. The financial crunch, the public interest and pressure, but also the sort of philosophical, deep commitment to public purpose. We've got to have a lot more degrees in this country for the future. And by the way, these big public universities have a major role in basic and other research. Right. I think there'll be some real change. And you look at your own industry, which, as you point out, I became quite familiar with in my days at Dow Jones. How many years ago was it that you wouldn't be doing this program?
That's a very good point.
I mean, not many years ago at all, reporters wrote things. But now you have this multiple role. And I think you reach more people and, frankly, have, in some ways, a even more rewarding job.
Well, the American newspaper reporters are happy to serve as a model for the professors at the public universities.
I think there's, I look at what Dow Jones has done, the Wall Street Journal and other papers, and I think, and you can remember how resistant there was to this different role for reporters.
Right.
And you're intellectual creators of content just as faculty are. So, will they get it? Yes, I see a lot of this happening, David.
Great. Well, thank you very much for your time today.